Hello there, my name is Pavlo Shtermo, and now we'll unveil the top news of recent days. 89 attack drones and a cruise missile. Russia launched a massive air attack on Ukraine last night. The air alert in most areas continues throughout the night. During this time, the Russians also took to the air Tu-95 strategic aircraft, which covered more than 5.5 thousand kilometers and are used to launch cruise missiles. Tonight, they just flew. However, no one knows what will happen tomorrow. Ukrainian air defense forces destroyed all drones and missiles launched by the Russians this night. This proves once again that it is the case of a sufficient number of missiles. Our soldiers can shoot down all the enemy ones.
Ukrainians can fully protect their skis from Russian strikes when they have sufficient supplies. The same level of defense is needed against Russian missiles and the occupiers' combat aircraft, and this can be achieved. We need sufficiently courageous decision from our partners, enough air defense systems, enough range, and Ukrainians will do everything correctly and precisely. Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, on social network X.
This is one of the most massive attacks by the Shahed UAVs. The enemy used the same number of Shaheds on the New Year's Eve on January 1st, 2024. As then, today, the Ukrainian air defense withstood and repelled a massive attack by enemy. More than 4 dozen enemy UAVs were shot down in the airspace of Kyiv and on their approaches to the capital. The invaders launched their rocket from the airspace of the occupied Kherson region, and the Shahed was launched from the regions of the Russian cities and towns of Yelsk, Secha, Kursk, and Primorsko-Akhtarsk. The main direction of the attack was Kyiv region. In the Kyiv region itself, a residential building caught fire at night as a result of fallen debris from a drone. The building is partially destroyed. Firefighters extinguished the fire. Mobile fire groups of all defense forces of Ukraine, tactical aviation of the Air Force, and army aviation of the ground forces, anti-aircraft missile units, and radio-electronic warfare of the Air Force were involved in repelling this massive air attack. Hungary is simplifying entry conditions for citizens of Russia and Belarus. This was reported by Deutsche Welle on social media. According to reports, after the visit of Hungarian Prime Minister Orban to Moscow, Budapest included Russians and Belarusians in the so-called National Card program. This card is issued to those wishing to work in Hungary for 2 years with the possibility of extension. This has already caused concern among Hungary's neighbors since the Hungarian government announced that it expects about 65,000 workers with their families. Permission to enter an EU country without verification, when the Russian authorities are doing everything possible to weaken Europe with the help of hybrid attacks. Don't you think that this is the wrong way? Hungary's recent decision to ease visa restrictions for Russia tourists is an open door for spies, and EU leaders must take urgent countermeasures. This was even stated by the head of the largest party in the EU Parliament, the European People's Party, Manfred Weber. According to the Financial Times, he said issuing European visas would allow unchecked Russians to travel freely across much of the EU and raised serious concerns for national security. Weber wrote to European Council President Charles Michel asking him to raise the issue at the next Leaders Summit in October. Weber said that the need for Hungary's new immigration system was questionable and warned that it could create serious loopholes for espionage activities and potentially allow large numbers of Russians to enter Hungary with minimal controls, posing a serious risk to national security. He also called on the EU to take strict measures to protect the integrity of the Schengen area, reduce security risks, and prevent similar initiatives in the future. Budapest said that many of the workers would be building a nuclear power plant using Russian technology, which is why it had updated its fast-track visa system, allowing, among other things, citizens of Russia and Belarus to enter Hungary without security checks with their families. China will not choose this side between Ukraine or Russia in the current war. Beijing supports the interests of only one country, itself. This was stated by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine, Dmytro Kuleba, in an interview with TSN. The minister explained that an important part of the conversation took place last week, devoted to the development of bilateral relations between Ukraine and China, in particular in the economy and trade.
And we are ready to welcome Minister Wang Yi in Ukraine to see firsthand the consequences of the Russian aggression against our country and hold deeper bilateral talks with him on a number of bilateral, regional, international issues. I am confident that the dialogue between Ukraine and China will continue on all levels, and it has already intensified since the beginning of this year, remarkably. We held first political consultations in June. We now had the ministers' visit, and this context will continue. It is very important that Kyiv and Beijing hold a direct dialogue.
At the same time, the Minister of Foreign Affairs explained that the Chinese do not think in such a way that they will stand on the side of Russia or there on the side of Ukraine. They have always stood firmly for thousands of years and will stand exclusively in the position of China's interests. China is not looking for temporary solutions and working for a permanent and strategic solution to the problem of the war launched by the Russian Federation against Ukraine, said Dmytro Kuleba. Kuleba also noted that there were various insinuations as to whether China supports the territorial integrity of Ukraine, and according to him, the Minister of the Foreign Affairs of PRC is very firm. It was clearly and repeatedly stated that the position of supporting the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine is inviolable for China. As Kuleba said when he spoke about the importance of a just peace, the Chinese minister himself added, not only just one, but also a lasting one discussed, some things about which it is not yet time to speak publicly. This month, NATO leaders said in a joint declaration that China is a decisive factor in Russia's war against Ukraine because the boundless partnership between Beijing and Moscow and its large-scale support defensively industrial base of Russia allow Moscow to wage war again. According to Western media, during the war in Ukraine, China became Russia's main supplier of goods needed for various weapons, including missiles. For example, the Financial Times wrote that in 2023, 90% of the chips imported by Russia came from China and were used in the production of missiles, tanks, and aircraft. In the last quarter of last year, China also imported 70% of the machines believed to be used in the production of ballistic missiles. The Chinese government declares that it does not provide weapons to any of the parties to the Russian-Ukrainian war, which Beijing itself calls the Ukrainian crisis. At the same time, the European Commission stressed that China, as a permanent member of the UN Security Council, should use its influence on Russia to end the war against Ukraine. It confirmed that the EU countries to support President Zelensky's peace formula, which is currently the only acceptable peace plan to end the Russian war against Ukraine. And this concludes our video for now. Thank you for watching. Stay updated, comment, like, and subscribe to our UATV English channel for more news from Ukraine. It is your support that actually matters for us. Goodbye.